Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Star Wars The Force Unleashed. I play on the Xbox Series X via backwards compatibility. It's also available on the Xbox One, Xbox 360, PS3, and PC via Steam. I think it's on the Nintendo Switch now. So let's get into the story. You play as a Sith apprentice known as Starkiller. You are basically Vader's secret apprentice. He's raising you to be nice and strong so he can take down the Emperor. But of course there are some twists and turns along the way, because why wouldn't there be? There are also 3 DLCs that have story elements to them. A couple of them are more like what-if scenarios, and one of them is just kind of doesn't fit in place in this game, really. It is part of the story of the game, but doesn't fit in really well, so I can understand why it's like an additional chapter. Now let's get into the audio, and the first thing I'm going to say is the voiceover work is well done in this game. I think they did a great job, although admittedly some of the characters aren't perfect that you run into. As for the music is really good. It really fits with the Star Wars, vibe of the game, since it's a Star Wars game. Then lastly, there's the sound effects, and I think the sound effects are very well done in this game as well. Let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a third-person action game, and say it with me, kids, with RPG elements. The game is very much mission by mission. You start at the beginning and you play the progressive missions to the end. It is that style of game. One thing that I will say is very unique to this game is that it's much more about your force powers than it is just basic lightsaber combat. It's combining them as well as just using your force powers because your character is very strong in the force. I remember like an interview they were talking about how they wanted this guy to be like a force wrecking ball. But you go mission to mission, you defeat enemies, you complete objectives. There are side objectives. Defeating enemies, completing side objectives gives you XP so you can upgrade your force powers, your general stats, all of that stuff. You get some force powers like force push, force lightning, grip, things like that. And you use those a lot. I used force lightning and grip the most, although I can't say force push was definitely awesome as well. But there are some other ones that I didn't find as useful, but those are kind of the main ones. You can also upgrade your lightsaber. You can really change the color. You can't tweak it quite as much as newer games allow you, but you can also add crystals that will give it special powers as well. Now, one thing I'm going to say is the targeting in this game for aiming where you want to use your force abilities, like who you want to use them on, it's shit. It's absolutely atrocious in this game. The targeting is just pure dog shit, and you notice it all the time, really. Boss fights, any fight, all the time. It's really difficult to target what you want to target. There was one boss fight I was in where there was a giant robot thing that I was fighting. It's the only thing in the arena and I couldn't target it to save my goddamn life. It gets unneededly frustrating, and there is a bit of a lock-on system, but it's not necessarily the best. So it just gets really shit, just plain and simple. It's really shit. But also, to accompany that, and it's not so much a control thing, the camera itself is just garbage. A lot of the times, it will turn into your worst enemy. It just does not work with you. It puts you in more danger than a lot of the bosses do, so not okay. And to bitch and moan some more, for some reason, loading into a level and out of a level when you die just takes way too long. Like, you will sit there and see it load in, you will fade in from black into the game, and you'll just stand there and stand there. But then when you die, you run into the same problem, and you just look at your dead body waiting for it to fade to black so you can reload and start again. Honestly, this game didn't take me that long to beat, but it would have taken less time if there wasn't so much waiting for that kind of crap. Now let's get into the controls, and honestly, everything's pretty responsive for the most part. I will say the QTEs don't respond as well as they should, but when you're actually in combat, everything felt responsive. Although again, when you're moving the camera, it works fine, but you can't always be moving the camera in combat, and the camera will shift and enemies will come from weird ways, and it will just completely wreck your visibility and put you in more danger than the bosses. Now let's get into the graphics and visuals, and this is one of those games that has not aged well. Like, when you're running around and everybody's fairly tiny, it looks fine, but man, when you get into those cutscenes, you can very clearly see how poorly this game has aged. They did their best with facial capture at the time. They had the actual actors and voice actors, doing it, acting this stuff out, and I mean, they did as well as they could with it, but it does not look as good as it could. Not even close, really. And they obviously went for a much more hyper-realistic look, and man, it has not held up well. Which is unfortunate because they really do capture the feel of a Star Wars game, the feel of the worlds you're on, the different worlds you go to. Those all they capture the feel. They all just look like dog shit though. I do like some of the visual tweaks though that they've made, with your lightsaber, the different crystals, you can really see the difference. Compressed ones will add a different effect to your lightsaber, and it looks cool. As well as just generally some of the designs. I think the way your character, their outfit changes for every mission, I think that's a cool little effort that they put in to, make him seem more real rather than him wearing the same thing over and over and over, That doesn't always make sense, and in a space futuristic world, it makes less sense than it does in a yieldy medieval game. Now let's get into the wrap-up. And before I say anything, I do want to comment on, this game has one of my favorite, jokes / Easter eggs in there. I just love it. But let's do the actual wrap-up, and I gotta say, man, this game does not hold up well. It's kind of amazing having ever played this. Knowing full well that this game did get a sequel, which I'm planning to review, it's hard to imagine that this game would ever get a sequel having played it again, because it just does not hold up well. Gameplay to the graphics, unneededly frustrating because it wasn't that well made. So yeah, honestly, you can skip it. It would not hurt you to skip this. It's unfortunate, but that is the truth. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, are you excited for Star Wars Jedi Survivor? Because I am. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.